She was forced to marry a vampire king cursed to feel nothing for 500 years. But when rebels tried to take her son, the king's dead heart cracked open. What no one expected, her 6-year-old boy carried the one power that could either save them all or destroy everything. The knock came at sunset. Not the polite, kind neighbors make. This one rattled the hinges and made dust fall from the ceiling beams. Mira froze, her hands still covered in flour from making bread. Through the window, she saw them. 3 figures in black cloaks standing impossibly still in her yard. No breath misted in the cold air.
No fidetin.
Just perfect, predatory stillness.
Nga.
Rowan looked up from his coloring book, his gray eyes too knowing for a 6-year-old. The pale people are here. Her blood turned to ice. Go to your room.
Now.
But now, Rowan. He scrambled up the ladder to the loft just as the door burst open without anyone touching it. The vampires entered like shadows given form. The lead figure pulled back his hood, revealing a face so pale it nearly glowed in the dying light. His eyes were black from edge to edge, no white, no iris, just endless dark. Mira Ashwood? His voice was smooth as silk over steel. She wanted to lie, wanted to say they had the wrong house. But lies didn't work on vampires. Everyone knew that. What do you want? The Nightbound Pact has been reactivated. He pulled out a scroll sealed with red wax. Your village must provide a bride for King Aldrich within 3 days. The council has decided. We haven't used that treaty in 200 years. Myra's voice shook, but she held her ground. That law is dead. The law sleeps. It does not die. The vampire's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. Border attacks have increased. Without a renewed bond, the peace fails. You should be honored. Find someone else. The vampire tilted his head, studying her. Then he did something that made her stomach drop. He pushed. Mira felt it like a wave crashing against her skull, a command written directly into her mind.
Kneel.
Submit. Accept. She staggered but stayed standing. The vampire's expression shifted from bored authority to sharp interest. Interesting. I said no. Myra's hands balled into fists. I have a son. I have a life. You can't just. You resisted a compulsion. The vampire glanced at his companions. Test the house.
No.
Mira lunged forward, but one of the other vampires moved faster than her eyes could track. Suddenly, she was pinned against the wall, a hand like iron around her throat, not squeezing, just holding. The lead vampire was already climbing the ladder.
Nga.
Rowan's scream pierced the air. Don't you dare touch him. Mira thrashed, but the grip didn't budge. She heard footsteps above. Rowan's frightened breathing. Then, silence. Too much silence. When the vampire descended, he looked shaken. Actually shaken. His black eyes were wider, and his pale skin had gone somehow paler. Release her, he ordered quietly. The pressure on Myra's throat vanished. She collapsed to her knees, gasping. What did you do to him? She wheezed. Nothing. The vampire stared at her like she was a ghost. Your son looked at me.
Directly at me.
No fear. No compulsion took hold. He paused. He asked why I was sad. Myra's heart hammered. So no one sees through our masks. Especially not human children. The vampire rolled up his scroll with sharp, precise movements. The pact requires someone immune to our influence. Someone whose will cannot be bent. His black eyes locked onto hers. We came to test volunteers. But we found something better. What are you saying? I'm saying your family has been chosen by fate itself. He moved toward the door, and his companions fell in behind him. You will come to the capital in 2 days. Both of you. And if I refuse? The vampire paused in the doorway. The last rays of sunlight caught the edge of his cloak, and for just a moment, Mira saw how thin he really was, how tired. Then the pact breaks. The border wars resume. And your village burns first. He looked back at her. But more importantly, Your son has a gift that makes him valuable. Dangerous. If you refuse the king's summons, others will come for the boy. Others with far less restraint. The threat hung in the air like smoke. How do I know you won't hurt him anyway? You don't. The vampire's expression was unreadable. But King Aldrich values rare things. And your son may be the rarest creature alive. He stepped into the twilight. 2 days, Mira Ashwood. Pack light. You won't need much where you're going. They vanished between one blink and the next. Mira stayed frozen on the floor, her mind racing. Then small footsteps creaked on the ladder, and Rowan climbed down slowly. His gray eyes were wet with tears, but he wasn't crying. We have to go, don't we? He whispered. Mira pulled him into her arms, holding him so tight she felt his heartbeat against her chest. She'd spent 6 years keeping him safe. 6 years alone after his father died. 6 years of rationed food and mended clothes and prayers that no one would notice how different Rowan was. How he never got sick. How animals trusted him instantly. How he always knew when someone was lying. She'd thought she could hide him forever. Yeah, baby, she said into his hair. We have to go. Will the sad king hurt us? Not if I can help it. Rowan pulled back and looked at her with those 2 old eyes.
He was sad, Mama.
So sad it made my chest hurt. He touched his small hand to his heart. Why would a king be so sad? Mira had no answer. But in 2 days, she would be standing in front of that king. In 2 days, she would be marrying a vampire 500 years old. In 2 days, everything she knew would end. She just didn't know yet that something else would begin. Something no one, not the vampires, not the pact, not even the ancient laws themselves, had expected. The carriage arrived at dawn, black as a coffin and twice as silent. Mira had barely slept. She'd spent the night packing what little they owned. 2 changes of clothes, Rowan's worn stuffed rabbit, a locket with her husband's portrait. Everything else she gave to her neighbor, Mrs. Chen, who cried and pressed a bundle of dried herbs into her hands. For protection, the old woman whispered, though I fear nothing protects against them. Now Mira stood in the gray morning light, holding Rowan's hand as the carriage door swung open by itself. No driver sat at the reins. No horses pulled the vehicle. It simply waited, like a beast trained to hunt. Mama, it smells wrong. Rowan wrinkled his nose.
He was right.
The air around the carriage was cold and sharp, like metal and old stone. I know, baby, but we have to go. They climbed inside. The door slammed shut the moment they sat down, and Myra's stomach lurched as the carriage began moving impossibly fast. Through the window, she watched her village blur into streaks of brown and green. Trees whipped past. The road became a ribbon of gray beneath them. Rowan pressed his face to the glass. We're flying. We're not, but Mira looked down and saw he was right. The wheels weren't touching the ground anymore. They hovered just above the road, propelled by something she couldn't see. Runes. She noticed them now, carved into every surface of the carriage's interior. They pulsed with a faint red light, like dying embers. Don't touch those, she warned, pulling Rowan back. They traveled in silence for what felt like hours. The landscape changed from rolling farmland to dense forest to rocky foothills. The sun climbed higher, but inside the carriage, the temperature never changed. Always cold. Always dim. Then Rowan said something that made her skin crawl. The walls are whispering. What? Listen, he tilted his head. They're scared. Mira pressed her ear to the carriage wall. At first, she heard nothing. Then, so faint she almost missed it, voices. Dozens of them, layered over each other like echoes in a cave. The child sees. Shouldn't be possible. Night-bound blood, after all these years. The king will finally. She jerked back. Stop listening to them. But they're talking about us. Rowan's gray eyes were wide. They keep saying I can see through something. See through what, Mama? Before Mira could answer, the carriage lurched violently. Thunder cracked overhead. so loud it rattled her teeth. Rain began hammering the roof, sudden, torrential, angry. Through the window, Mira saw they were climbing into mountains. Jagged peaks pierced the clouds like broken teeth. The sky had turned the color of a bruise, purple and black and churning. "We're entering his territory," a voice said from inside the carriage. Mira spun around. One of the vampire guards materialized in the corner, the same one from her house, with the black eyes and tired face. She hadn't seen him enter. He just appeared. "How did you?" "The storm marks the border," he ignored her question, staring out the window. "King Aldric's domain. For 500 years, this land has been sealed by his power." He glanced at Rowan. "The weather reflects his mood." "He's angry we're coming?" Mira asked. "No." The vampire's expression was unreadable. "He doesn't know yet that the council chose a mother and child. He thinks we're bringing a volunteer." A pause. "He's going to be furious. Then why bring us?" "Because the alternative is war." The vampire leaned forward, and for the first time, Mira saw something almost human in his face.
Fear.
"And because your son might be the only thing that can save him." "Save him from what?" But the vampire faded back into shadows without answering. The carriage climbed higher. The storm intensified. Lightning split the sky in jagged scars, illuminating a massive structure ahead, a citadel carved from black stone, perched on the mountain's peak like a crown of thorns. Rowan grabbed her hand. "Mama, it's so big."
It was.
The citadel sprawled across the mountaintop, all sharp angles and soaring towers. Windows glowed with cold blue light. Banners whipped in the wind, marked with a symbol Mira didn't recognize, a crescent moon pierced by a sword. The carriage descended into a courtyard paved with obsidian. When the door opened, the wind nearly tore it off its hinges. Mira stepped out, pulling Rowan close. Rain soaked them instantly. Around the courtyard, dozens of figures in black armor stood at attention. All of them had the same pale skin, the same dark eyes. All of them were staring at Rowan. Not with hunger, with fear. "This way," the vampire guard said, appearing beside them with an umbrella that did nothing against the sideways rain. "The king is waiting." Myra's heart pounded as they crossed the courtyard. The massive doors of the citadel groaned open, revealing an entrance hall lit by floating orbs of blue flame. And at the far end, standing perfectly still beneath a stained-glass window depicting a bleeding moon. A figure in a dark coat, his back to them, his shoulders tense. The door slammed shut. The king didn't turn around. But Mira heard his voice, low and cold as winter stone. "Tell me you didn't." The vampire guard beside Mira went rigid. "Your Majesty, the pact required. I asked you to find a volunteer." The king's voice cut through the hall like a blade. "Someone willing. Someone alone." He still hadn't turned around. The blue flames cast a shadow long across the obsidian floor, stretching toward them like a dark river. "The pact specifies immunity to compulsion," the guard said carefully. "We tested 43 volunteers. None were immune. But this woman. So you forced her. It wasn't a question." Mira felt Rowan press closer to her side. She wrapped her arm around him, her other hand clutching their single bag. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but there was nowhere to go. The doors behind them were sealed. The guards blocked every exit. "Your Majesty," the guard continued, "there are complications." "Of course there are." The king's hand rose to touch the stained glass above him, a window showing a moon weeping red tears. "There are always complications when you trade morality for convenience." Lightning flashed outside, turning the window into a kaleidoscope of crimson and silver. Then he turned. Myra's breath caught. She'd expected a monster. The village stories painted King Aldric as a creature of nightmare, rotting flesh, dripping fangs, eyes like pools of blood. They said he bathed in the blood of humans, that he collected skulls, that his voice alone could drive people mad. But the man, no, the vampire, standing before her looked nothing like the stories. He was tall, dressed in a dark coat with silver clasps. His hair was black, falling to his shoulders, and his skin was pale, but not corpse-like. His face was angular and sharp, beautiful in the way a winter morning is beautiful, cold and distant and untouchable. But it was his eyes that stopped her heart. They were gray, not black like the other vampires. Gray like storm clouds, like ash, like the color of grief itself. And they were exhausted. He looked like someone who'd been awake for 500 years and couldn't remember how to sleep. A mother, his voice was quieter now, but no warmer. You brought me a mother. We brought you, the only human immune to. I can see that Aldrich's gray eyes fixed on Mira, and she felt the weight of his gaze like a physical thing. Not pushing, not compelling, just
seeing.
I'm sorry, he said to her. Truly. This wasn't supposed to happen. Mira found her voice. Then let us go. I can't. Something flickered across his face. Pain, maybe, or regret. If I break the pact now, the council will have the excuse they need to dethrone me. And the vampire who takes my place won't be sorry. He looked away. They'll burn your village as an example. So we're prisoners. Your leverage, his jaw tightened. Against me. Before Mira could respond, Rowan did something that made every vampire in the hall go deathly still. He stepped forward. Rowan, no. Mira grabbed for him, but he slipped from her grasp and walked straight toward the king. The guards moved to intercept, but Aldrich raised one hand. Don't. Rowan stopped 3 feet away and tilted his head, studying the king with those 2 knowing eyes. You're the sad one. Aldrich stared down at him. What? The vampire at our house was sad, but you're so much sadder. Rowan's voice was soft, curious.
Why?
Rowan. Mira started forward, but 2 guards blocked her path. Aldrich knelt slowly, bringing himself to Rowan's eye level. You shouldn't be able to see that. But I can. Rowan reached out and touched the king's face with one small hand. You're cold, and you can't feel anything. That's why you're sad. The hall went silent. Aldrich's eyes widened, actually widened, and for a moment his carefully controlled expression cracked.
Shock,
recognition, and something that looked almost like hope. Impossible, he whispered. Then he looked up at Mira, and she saw real fear in his ancient eyes. What is your son? He's 6 years old. Mira's voice shook with fury. He's a child, and if you hurt him... I won't. Aldrich stood abruptly, putting distance between himself and Rowan. His hands trembled slightly before he clasped them behind his back. But others will try. He turned to the guard. Deploy the shadow unit. No one enters the royal wing without my direct permission. Anyone who tries dies. Your Majesty, the council will protest. Let them. Aldrich's voice turned to iron. This boy is under my protection. Anyone who touches him answers to me personally. He looked back at Mira. The same goes for his mother. Why? Mira demanded. What's so special about him? Aldrich was quiet for a long moment. The blue flames flickered. Thunder rumbled in the distance. Your son can see through night-bound illusions, he finally said. A gift that hasn't existed for 300 years. A gift that means he stopped, jaw working like the words were hard to say. He might be the key to breaking my curse. What curse? Aldrich looked at her with those gray, grief-filled eyes. The curse that stole my ability to feel anything at all. They were taken to a suite in the Eastern Tower, 3 rooms with stone walls, velvet curtains, and furniture that looked older than Mira's entire village. A fire burned in the hearth, but it gave no warmth. Rowan fell asleep almost immediately, exhausted from the journey. Mira sat beside his bed, watching him breathe, her mind racing. A curse. The king is cursed. She didn't have long to think about it. An hour before midnight, a woman entered without knocking. She was vampire, pale, elegant, wearing a gown of deep purple that seemed to absorb the firelight. Her eyes were the traditional black, and her smile was sharp as broken glass. I am Lady Seraphine, head of the King's Council. She looked Mira up and down with obvious disdain. Tomorrow you will marry King Aldrich. I'm here to prepare you. I haven't agreed to anything. Your agreement is irrelevant, Seraphine gestured, and two servants entered carrying an elaborate wedding gown, white silk and silver embroidery, beautiful and terrible. The pact demands a ceremony within 48 hours of the bride's arrival. The treaty is law. And if I refuse? Seraphine's smile widened. Then your son becomes property of the council. We'll raise him ourselves. Train him. Use him. She leaned closer. Is that what you want, little human? To lose your child because of pride? Myra's hands clenched into fists. You're a monster. I'm a survivor, Seraphine straightened. And I've kept this kingdom intact for 200 years while our king slowly turned to stone. If sacrificing one human woman saves thousands of vampire lives, I'll do it without hesitation. She moved toward the door. The ceremony is at noon. Be ready. She left, and the servants followed, leaving the wedding gown draped over a chair like a ghost. Mira didn't sleep that night. The ceremony took place in a chamber carved entirely from black crystal. Cold sunlight filtered through narrow windows, painting everything in shades of gray. Mira wore the wedding gown because she had no choice. They'd taken her own clothes while she slept. The dress fit perfectly, which somehow made everything worse. Rowan stood beside her, dressed in a miniature formal suit, his gray eyes wide and worried. The hall was packed with vampires, hundreds of them, all pale faces and dark eyes and expressions ranging from curiosity to contempt. They whispered behind jeweled fans and gloved hands. A human queen. Disgraceful. The bloodline will be tainted. At the far end of the hall, Aldrich waited beside a robed officiant. He wore black, head to toe, and looked like he was attending a funeral. His gray eyes found hers across the crowd, and she saw apology there, but also resignation. He'd given up fighting this. Lady Seraphine stood at the front of the crowd, her expression triumphant. The officiant raised his hands. We gathered to renew the night-bound pact. King Aldrich of the Eternal Court shall take Mira Ashwood as his queen, binding human and vampire in sacred treaty. His voice echoed off the crystal walls. Let the bride come forward. Myra's feet moved on their own. Not compulsion, just the numb knowledge that resistance meant losing Rowan. She walked down the aisle, every eye on her, feeling like a sacrifice being led to an altar. When she reached Aldrich, he leaned close and whispered, I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't help. I know. The officiant began the ritual, words in a language Mira didn't understand, guttural and old. He took her hand and Aldrich's, binding them together with a silver cord that glowed with the same red light as the carriage runes. Do you, Aldrich, King of Night, accept this bond? I do, his voice was flat. Empty. Do you, Mira Ashwood, accept this bond? Mira looked at Rowan, standing so small and scared at the edge of the hall. Then at Aldrich, this ancient creature trapped by his own council's machinations. I accept, she said, on one condition. The hall erupted in shocked whispers. The officiant's eyes widened. That's not. My son stays with me. Myra's voice rang clear. Always. He doesn't leave my sight. He doesn't become anyone's property or weapon or tool. He's my son, and he stays mine. Lady Seraphine started forward. This is not how the pact. Agreed, Aldrich said. Everyone froze. The king looked at his council with an expression that could have frozen fire. The boy stays with his mother. In the royal wing. Under my personal protection, his gray eyes swept the crowd. Anyone who objects can challenge me directly. Here.
Now.
No one moved. Seraphine's face went white with fury, but she said nothing. Then I accept, Mira said. The officiant completed the binding. The silver cord flared bright, then vanished, leaving a thin white mark on both their wrists. By the power of the night-bound pact, the officiant declared, I pronounce you bound in marriage. King and queen. Vampire and human. The crowd's applause was cold and mechanical. Aldrich looked down at the mark on his wrist, his expression unreadable. Then he did something unexpected. He offered Mira his arm. "Shall we?" he said quietly. It wasn't a command. It was a question. Mira took his arm, and together they walked back down the aisle, a king cursed to feel nothing, and a human queen who just bet everything on a monster's mercy. Behind them, Rowan followed, clutching his stuffed rabbit. And in the shadows, Lady Seraphine smiled like a snake. The royal wing was a maze of corridors and locked doors. Aldrich led them in silence, servants scattering at his approach. No one spoke. No one looked directly at Mira. Their new chambers were vast, a sitting room with ancient tapestries, a bedroom with a canopy bed large enough for 5 people, and a smaller adjoining room that Aldrich gestured to. "For your son. I'll have proper furniture brought in the morning." Rowan peeked inside, then looked up at Aldrich. "Will you sleep in the big bed with Mama?" Aldrich's expression didn't change, but Mira saw his jaw tighten.
No.
"I don't sleep. Ever?" "Not for a very long time." He moved toward the door. "I'll be in the study down the hall if you need." "Wait." Mira caught his arm, then immediately released it. His skin was cold as marble. "You said Rowan might break your curse. What did you mean?" Aldrich was silent for a long moment. Outside the window, the moon was rising, full and silver and impossibly bright. "Not tonight," he said quietly. "You've been through enough. I deserve to know what you want for my son. I don't want anything from him." For the first time, real emotion cracked through Aldrich's voice, something raw and desperate. "I want him safe. Because what he can do." He looked at Rowan, who was exploring his new room with cautious curiosity. "If the council realizes the full extent of his gift, they'll never let him leave this citadel. They'll turn him into a weapon." "Against who?" "Against me." Before Mira could ask more, Aldrich left, closing the door behind him with a soft click. Mira tried to settle Rowan for bed, but he was too agitated. He kept touching the walls, running his small hands over the stone. "Mama, there's something here." "It's just a room, baby." "No." He pressed his palm flat against the wall beside the fireplace. "There's something." The wall erupted in silver light. Mira screamed and grabbed Rowan, pulling him back. But the light didn't burn. It spread like veins through the stone, racing across the walls in intricate patterns. Runes. Hundreds of them, hidden beneath centuries of dust and darkness, now blazing with cold fire. The door burst open. Aldrich stood frozen in the doorway, staring at the glowing walls with an expression of pure shock. "Impossible," he whispered. The light grew brighter. Rowan wasn't afraid. He stepped forward, reaching toward the nearest rune. When his fingers touched it, the symbol pulsed like a heartbeat. "Rowan, don't." Mira lunged for him, but Aldrich was faster. He caught her arm, holding her back. "Wait," he breathed. "Just wait." The runes began to sing. It wasn't sound, exactly, more like a vibration in Mira's chest and her bones. Ancient words whispered through the air, overlapping and echoing. "Blood of the firstborn, keeper of light, bridge between worlds." Rowan tilted his head, listening. "They're talking about me." "Yes." Aldrich released Mira and moved closer, his gray eyes fixed on the glowing symbols. These runes were carved by the first Nightbound, humans who could resist vampire influence, who served as peacekeepers between our species. His voice was tight with something that might have been hope. "They've been dormant for 300 years. No one's been able to activate them since." "Since when?" Mira demanded. "Since the last Nightbound was executed." Aldrich's expression darkened. "By my council. They claimed she was a threat to vampire sovereignty." He looked at Rowan. "Your son isn't just immune to compulsion. He's a descendant. The first in 3 centuries." The runes flared brighter, and suddenly the room filled with images, ghostly figures made of silver light. Mira saw humans and vampires standing together, signing treaties, building bridges. She saw a woman with Rowan's same gray eyes, her hand raised in blessing over a kneeling vampire king. Then the images shattered.
She saw fire.
Screaming. The woman dragged to a stake while vampires watched with cold, black eyes. They killed her because she couldn't be controlled, Mira whispered. They killed her because she was the only one who could break the curse the council placed on me. Aldrich's voice was barely audible. The curse that ensures I can't feel enough to care what they do. As long as I'm numb, I'm manageable. The runes began to fade, their light dying like embers. Rowan turned to Aldrich. I can help you. No, the king's response was immediate, almost violent. You're a child. You don't know what you're offering. But you're sad. I'm broken, Aldrich knelt, bringing himself eye level with Rowan. And breaking a curse like mine requires sacrifice.
Pain.
Maybe death. His gray eyes were fierce. I won't let you hurt yourself to fix me. I'm not worth it. Yes, you are, Rowan said simply. The last rune faded. The room fell silent. Aldrich stood abruptly and turned to Mira. This changes everything. When the council learns what he can do, when they realize he's true Nightbound, he ran a hand through his dark hair, and for a moment he looked lost. They didn't just choose you to control me. They chose you because they want him. Want him for what? Aldrich's expression was grim. To finish what they started 300 years ago. To make sure no Nightbound ever threatens their power again. Morning came with a summons. Mira woke to find a servant at her door, a pale young woman with nervous hands and eyes that wouldn't meet hers. Lady Seraphine requests your presence at court breakfast, Your Majesty. Your Majesty. The title felt like a noose. I need to stay with my son. The king has already arranged for guards. The servant gestured down the hallway, where two massive figures stood in black armor. Shadow Unit. They'll protect the young master while you attend. Mira looked back at Rowan, still sleeping peacefully in his new bed. Every instinct screamed not to leave him, but refusing a direct summons on her first day would paint a target on both their backs.
Fine.
Give me 10 minutes. The breakfast hall was nothing like Mira expected. Instead of a dark, cavernous space, it was a glass conservatory filled with night-blooming flowers. Dawn light filtered through crystalline panels, casting rainbow shadows across white marble tables. Dozens of vampire nobles sat in small clusters, sipping what Mira desperately hoped was wine from crystal goblets. They all turned to stare when she entered. The whispers started immediately. That's her? So plain. I heard she's a peasant, a widow. And she brought a child into the palace. Lady Seraphine sat at the head table, surrounded by other council members. She smiled when she saw Mira, a predator's smile, all teeth and calculation. Our new queen. How delightful. She gestured to an empty chair. Please join us. Mira had no choice. She sat, acutely aware of every eye on her. The chair beside her remained empty. Aldrich's chair, she realized. The king was absent. His Majesty doesn't attend breakfast, Seraphine said, reading her thoughts. He stopped participating in court meals 50 years ago. Too much tedium, he claimed. She sipped from her goblet. Of course, we all know the real reason. The curse makes food taste like ash. Then why am I here? Because you're still human. You still need to eat. And more importantly, Seraphine leaned forward, you need to understand your place. A servant set a plate before Mira. Real food, bread, fruit, cheese. Her stomach growled despite her anxiety. Eat, Seraphine commanded softly. And listen. Mira took a bite of bread. Around the table, the other council members watched her like scientists observing an experiment. The Nightbound Pact is ancient, Seraphine began, her voice carrying across the quiet hall. It was created to prevent war. But it comes with rules. She ticked them off on pale fingers. The human bride must produce an heir within 5 years. She must adopt vampire customs. She must never leave the Citadel without the king's express permission. I'm not a prisoner, Mira said. You're a treaty, a male council member corrected. He was older than the others, with silver threaded through his black hair. A living contract. Your comfort is irrelevant. And the child? Another voice asked, A woman with cruel eyes and a smile like poisoned honey. What are the rules regarding offspring the bride brings with her? The question hung in the air like a blade. Rowan is my son, Mira said carefully. He's protected by the king's whim. Seraphine's smile sharpened. Which can change. Aldrich may be merciful now, but curses are unpredictable. One day he might decide the boy is too dangerous. Too valuable. She paused. What happens then, I wonder? Myra's hands clenched under the table. If you hurt him. We won't, Seraphine laughed, light and musical. We'll train him. The way we should have trained the last Nightbound, instead of executing her. Imagine what a child with that gift could become, with proper guidance. A weapon against our enemies. A tool to strengthen the kingdom. Her black eyes glittered. Your son could be extraordinary. If he survives long enough to reach his potential. Is that a threat? It's reality. The older council member set down his goblet. This citadel is home to 12 ancient vampire houses. Most supported reactivating the pact. But not all. Lord Vane's faction believes humans contaminate our bloodline. They'll see your son as an abomination. They'll try to kill him, the woman with cruel eyes added casually. Probably within the week. Nothing personal, just politics. Myra's blood ran cold. And you're telling me this because? Because we want you to understand something. Seraphine stood, moving around the table with liquid grace. She stopped behind Myra's chair, leaning close enough to whisper. The king protects you now. But Aldrich is weak. Sentimental. He let his emotions die but kept his conscience, which makes him useless as a ruler. Then why keep him as king? Because tradition demands it. For now, Seraphine's fingers brushed Myra's shoulder. Cold, threatening. But traditions can change.
Kings can fall.
And when that happens, your son's fate will be decided by whoever takes the throne. She straightened. So I suggest you make allies quickly, little queen, before you run out of time. She swept from the hall, council members following like shadows. Mira sat frozen, the bread turning to sand in her mouth. Across the conservatory, a figure emerged from behind a pillar. Aldrich stepped into the light, his gray eyes dark with fury. How long have you been here? Mira asked. Long enough. His jaw was tight. Come with me.
Now.
He didn't wait for an answer, just turned and walked toward a side door. Mira followed, her heart hammering. When they were alone in the corridor, Aldrich stopped and turned to face her. I'm assigning the shadow unit to you and Rowan permanently. They answer only to me. No one else can command them. Will that be enough? No, his expression was grim. But it's all I can do without starting a civil war. Aldrich led her through winding corridors to a tower room she hadn't seen before. It was circular, lined with books that looked ready to crumble into dust. A single window overlooked the mountains, where morning mist clung to the peaks like ghosts. This was my study, he said quietly. Before the curse. I used to spend hours here, reading, thinking. He touched the spine of a leather-bound tome. Now I come here to remember what it felt like to care about something. Mira closed the door behind her. Tell me about the curse. The truth this time. Aldrich was silent for a long moment, staring out the window. When he finally spoke, his voice was distant, like he was recounting someone else's story. 300 years ago, I fell in love. Mira blinked. Whatever she'd expected, it wasn't that. Her name was Alara. She was human. Nightbound, a ghost of a smile crossed his face. She could look at me and see exactly what I was thinking. I couldn't hide anything from her.
Couldn't lie. Couldn't pretend. He paused. It was terrifying.
And extraordinary. What happened? The council happened. Aldrich's hands clenched. They saw our bond as a threat. A human who could read the king's true intentions? Who could expose their manipulations? Unacceptable. His gray eyes darkened. They gave me a choice. Execute her myself and prove my loyalty to vampire sovereignty. Or watch my entire kingdom burn in civil war. Myra's throat tightened. You killed her? No, the word came out like broken glass. I refused. So they took the choice from me. He turned from the window, and Mira saw ancient pain etched in every line of his face. They cursed me. A night-bound curse, ironically. One Alera's own ancestors had created to punish vampire tyrants. It severed my ability to feel deep emotion.
Love, joy, grief.
All of it. Muted.
Distant.
Like trying to remember a dream. And Alera? They executed her while I watched. I saw it happen. Understood intellectually that I should feel something. But the curse had already taken hold. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. I couldn't even mourn her properly. Couldn't rage.
Couldn't weep.
I just stood there. Empty. Mira felt tears burning in her eyes. That's monstrous. Its effective. Aldrich's laugh was bitter. A king who can't love his people can't fight for them either. Can't risk everything for principle. The council has ruled through me ever since, making decisions they claim are in my name. He looked at her. They didn't force you into this marriage to strengthen the pact. They did it to reinforce my chains. I don't understand. The curse is one loophole. Aldrich moved closer, and Mira saw something desperate in his eyes. It can only be broken by a willing bond with someone immune to vampire compulsion. Someone who chooses to connect with me, knowing exactly what I am, without any magical coercion. He stopped a few feet away. Someone nightbound. The pieces clicked into place. That's why Alera could have freed you.
Yes.
And that's why the council killed her before she could try. He gestured between them. This marriage is their insurance policy. They forced you into it. Threatened your son. Made sure you could never willingly choose me. His expression was hollow. As long as you're here under duress, the bond is corrupted. The curse remains intact. Myra's mind reeled. But Rowan, your son is true nightbound. Stronger than any I've seen. If he wanted to, if he chose to, he could break the curse. Aldrich's voice turned fierce. Which is exactly why I'll never ask him. He's a child. He doesn't understand what he'd be giving up. The pain he'd have to endure. He shook his head. I've been cursed for 3 centuries. I can survive 3 more. But I won't sacrifice a 6-year-old boy to save myself. What if the council tries to force him? Then I'll burn this citadel to the ground before I let them touch him. The vehemence in Aldrich's voice startled her. That's the one emotion the curse couldn't fully suppress. Protective rage. It's not love. It's not compassion. But it's enough. His gray eyes locked on hers. I failed to protect Alera. I won't fail your son. Mira studied him. This ancient vampire king, cursed to numbness, standing in a forgotten tower room surrounded by books he could no longer care about reading. Why are you telling me all this? Because you deserve the truth. Aldrich turned back to the window. And because I need you to understand something. When they come for Rowan, and they will come, you can't trust anyone except the Shadow Unit.
Not the other guards.
Not the servants. Not even vampires who seem sympathetic. He paused. The council has spent 300 years perfecting the art of control. They'll use kindness, threats, manipulation, whatever works. But their goal is the same. To keep you cursed. To keep me compliant. He looked back at her. A king who feels nothing is a king who won't rebel. Won't fight back. Won't burn the world down to protect the people he loves. His expression was bleak. They've turned me into a figurehead. A symbol with no substance. Then why not abdicate? Walk away. Because the vampire who takes my place will be worse. Aldrich's voice was flat with certainty. Lady Seraphine is next in line. And she believes humans are livestock. Resources to be managed and consumed. He met her eyes. At least while I'm king, I can slow their worst impulses.
Protect some people.
Save a few lives. That's not living, Mira said softly. That's just existing. Yes, the single word held 3 centuries of exhaustion. But for now, it's enough. The attack came 3 nights later, during the evening meal. Mira had just finished putting Rowan to bed when she heard it, a sound like breaking glass, followed by a child's scream. Rowan! She ran. The hallway outside their chambers was chaos. 2 Shadow Unit guards lay crumpled against the walls, unconscious but breathing. The door to Rowan's room hung off its hinges, and inside, 4 vampires in dark cloaks surrounded her son's bed. One held Rowan by the arm, lifting him like he weighed nothing. Her boy was crying, kicking, his stuffed rabbit fallen on the floor. "Let him go." Mira grabbed the nearest weapon, a decorative candlestick, and swung it at the closest vampire. He caught it effortlessly and backhanded her across the face. Pain exploded through her skull. She hit the wall hard, tasting copper.
Manga.
Rowan's scream turned to a wail. "Silence the brat," one of the vampires hissed. "We need to move before." Mira didn't think. She just moved. 6 years of protecting Rowan alone had taught her things. How to fight dirty. How to survive when you're outmatched. How to turn fear into fury. She lunged at the vampire holding her son and drove her fingers into his eyes. He shrieked, actually shrieked, and dropped Rowan. The boy hit the floor and scrambled toward her. "Run!" Mira shouted, putting herself between her son and the attackers. But there was nowhere to run. The vampires recovered quickly, spreading out to block the exits. The one she'd scratched glared at her with black eyes full of murderous rage. "You'll die for that, human." He moved faster than thought and stopped mid-lunge, suspended in the air. Aldrich stood in the doorway, one hand raised. The attacking vampire hung frozen, clawing at his own throat like invisible hands were strangling him. The king stepped into the room, and the temperature dropped 10 degrees. "Explain," Aldrich said quietly, "why I shouldn't kill all of you right now." "Lord Vane sent us," one of the other vampires began. "I didn't ask who sent you. I asked why I shouldn't kill you." Aldrich's voice was still soft, still calm, but something in it made Myra's survival instinct scream. "You entered my personal wing, harmed my guards, threatened my queen, and attempted to kidnap a child under my protection." The vampire he was choking turned purple.
Blue.
His struggles weakened. "Your Majesty, please." Another attacker dropped to his knees. "We were following orders. Lord Vane believes the nightbound boy is too dangerous to remain." "What Lord Vane believes," Aldrich interrupted, "is irrelevant." He made a twisting motion with his hand. The choking vampire's neck snapped with a wet crack. The body crumpled to the floor. Mira pulled Rowan close, covering his eyes, but she couldn't look away. This was the king the stories talked about. Not the exhausted, cursed man from the Tower study. This was a predator 500 years old, and they'd just threatened his territory. "You 3 have a choice," Aldrich said to the remaining attackers. "You can return to Lord Vane and tell him what happened here. Tell him that the next vampire who touches this child will face me personally. Tell him I'm willing to demonstrate exactly how much power a cursed king still possesses when sufficiently motivated." The 3 vampires scrambled backward, terrified. Or one managed to ask, "Or I kill you now and send your heads to him in a box." Aldrich's gray eyes were cold as winter stone. "Your choice. You have 5 seconds." They chose to run. Aldrich let them go, then turned to Mira and Rowan. The terrifying power drained from his expression, leaving only concern. "Are you hurt?" Mira touched her split lip.
"I've fine."
"Rowan." Her son was shaking but unharmed. He looked at the dead vampire on the floor, then at Aldrich. "You saved us," Rowan whispered. "I should have prevented this entirely." Aldrich knelt beside them. "I underestimated how quickly Vane would move. That was my failure." "You killed him." Myra's voice shook. "You just..." snapped his neck. "Yes, no apology.
No justification.
Just acknowledgement." "Will there be consequences?" "Oh, absolutely." Aldrich stood, and for a moment something that might have been grim satisfaction crossed his face. "By morning, Lord Vane will demand my head before the full council. Seraphine will support him. She's been waiting for an excuse to challenge my rule." He looked at the body. "Killing a noble without trial, even a noble who broke sacred laws, gives them the leverage they need." "Then why did you do it?" Aldrich looked at her, and in his gray eyes she saw something the curse hadn't quite managed to extinguish. Because some things matter more than politics. Before Mira could respond, more Shadow Unit guards arrived, these ones alert and armed. Aldrich gave crisp orders: secure the wing, remove the body, post triple guards. Then he turned back to Mira and Rowan. Pack essentials. You're moving to the king's personal chambers tonight. No one enters those rooms without breaking wards that would wake me instantly. He paused. You won't be alone. I'll be there. But you'll be safe. The council will say we're. Let them say whatever they want. Aldrich's expression hardened. The coup is coming anyway. At least this way, I'll see them coming. The king's chambers were nothing like Mira expected.
Nosroon. No opulense.
Just a sparse room with a desk covered in maps, a single chair, and shelves lined with journals. Through a side door, she glimpsed a bed that looked like it had never been used. I don't sleep, Aldrich reminded her when he caught her looking. The curse makes rest difficult. But you and Rowan can take the adjoining suite. The wards extend through both rooms. Rowan had finally fallen asleep in Myra's arms, exhausted from fear. She laid him carefully on the bed in the next room, then returned to find Aldrich staring at one of the maps, a detailed illustration of the citadel with marks and notes in the margins. Lord Vane's territory, he said without looking up. He controls the western wing. 30 loyal vampires, maybe more. If he moves against me, it'll be during tomorrow's council session. His finger traced a path.
Here.
The main hall has 7 exits, but only 3 I can defend simultaneously. You're planning for war. I'm planning to survive. He finally looked at her. But there's something you need to see first. Something that might change everything. What? The truth about what your son is. What he could become. Aldrich moved to the bookshelf and pressed a specific sequence of spines. The entire wall shifted inward with a grinding sound, revealing a hidden staircase descending into darkness. A secret passage in your bedroom? Mira raised an eyebrow. My predecessor was paranoid. It served him well. He lived to be 800-inch. Aldrich pulled a torch from the wall, and it ignited with blue flame. This leads to the Nightbound archives. Records the council thought they'd destroyed 3 centuries ago. You've been hiding them all this time? I've been protecting them. He started down the stairs. Coming? Mira glanced back at Rowan's sleeping form, then followed. The wards would protect him, and she needed answers. The stairs spiraled down for what felt like forever. The air grew colder, older, thick with the weight of buried history. Finally, they emerged into a vast underground chamber. Mira gasped. The room was enormous, carved from natural stone, and lit by hundreds of glowing crystals embedded in the walls. Shelves stretched into the darkness, packed with books, scrolls, artifacts. And on every surface, runes. The same silver symbols that had blazed to life in her room when Rowan touched them. She couldn't find words. The true history of our species. Aldrich moved to a central table where a massive tome lay open. Everything the council wanted erased. The Nightbound weren't just peacekeepers, Mira. They were the reason vampires and humans coexisted for 1,000 years. He turned pages, revealing illustrations, humans with glowing hands standing between warring factions, children with gray eyes teaching vampires and humans side by side, ceremonies where Nightbound blood sealed treaties. They weren't immune to our compulsion by accident, Aldrich continued. They were created. A magical experiment by the first vampire scholars, designed to produce humans who could serve as neutral arbiters, judges, protectors. His finger traced an image of a woman who looked startlingly like Rowan, same gray eyes, same serious expression. The experiment succeeded beyond anyone's imagination. The Nightbound didn't just resist compulsion. They could see through vampire nature, perceive our true emotions beneath the predatory instincts. They could see through your curse, Mira realized. Exactly. Aldrich turned more pages. For centuries, Nightbound families served as advisors to vampire kings. They prevented wars, negotiated peace, kept us from becoming the monsters we're capable of being. He stopped on a page showing flames and chaos. Until the nobles realized what that meant. That they could manipulate you. That they could manipulate anyone while Nightbound existed, Aldrich's voice was bitter. So they orchestrated a purge. Called it necessary for vampire sovereignty. Claimed the Nightbound were becoming too powerful, too influential. He closed the book gently. They hunted every family, every descendant. Alara was the last one I could protect, and even then. He trailed off, staring at the ancient tome. But they missed someone, Mira said quietly. Somewhere in my family line? Your bloodline survived because someone hid it well, diluted it through generations of ordinary humans until the gift seemed extinct. Aldrich looked at her. Until Rowan was born. A throwback. The strongest Nightbound I've ever encountered, and I've lived 500 years. Mira thought about Rowan's strange abilities. How he always knew when she was sad, even when she smiled. How animals trusted him. How he looked at that first vampire and seen sadness instead of threat. What does this mean for him? It means he's not just a child who can resist compulsion. Aldrich moved to another shelf and pulled down a smaller book bound in silver. According to these records, fully trained Nightbound could do remarkable things. Heal emotional wounds. Break curses. He hesitated. Even purge vampire bloodlust temporarily, allowing us to experience humanity without losing our strength. You want him to break your curse? No, Aldrich's response was firm. I want him to survive. Because these records also show what happened to Nightbound who used their gifts too early, before proper training. He opened the silver book to a page showing a child, no older than Rowan, lying still on an altar. They burned out. Their minds couldn't handle the psychic strain. They died, Mira. Every single one who tried to use their full power before adolescence. Myra's blood ran cold. You're saying if Rowan tries to break your curse, it could kill him? Aldrich closed the book. Which is why I brought you down here. Not to ask for his help, but to show you why I'll protect him with everything I have. Your son is the last Nightbound. The last chance to restore what we lost. And I will not let 300 years of genocide end with a 6-year-old boy dying to save a cursed king. The council session began at midnight, as tradition demanded. Mira stood beside Aldrich's throne in the great hall, acutely aware of every hostile gaze. Rowan was back in the protected chambers with 4 Shadow Unit guards, the only vampires Aldrich trusted completely. The hall was packed. Not just council members, but nobles from every house, servants, guards. Word of the killing had spread like wildfire. Lord Vane stood at the center of the floor, tall and angular, with silver hair and eyes like chips of obsidian. He radiated cold fury. You murdered my nephew, he said without preamble, without trial, without mercy, before witnesses. Your nephew broke sacred law, Aldrich replied from his throne, his voice level. He entered the royal wing without permission, attacked my personal guards, attempted to kidnap a child under my direct protection. He leaned forward slightly. What would you have me do, Vane? Thank him? Angry murmurs rippled through the crowd. You could have imprisoned him. Vane's voice rose. Held a trial. But no, you executed him like a common criminal to prove a point. The point, Aldrich said quietly, is that my protection means something. That laws apply even to nobles. That I will not tolerate. You will not tolerate? Lady Seraphine's voice cut through the hall like a blade. She stepped forward from the council seats, her purple gown trailing behind her. That's rich, coming from a king who's been tolerating his own irrelevance for 3 centuries. The hall went silent. Careful, Seraphine, Aldrich warned.
Why?
What will you do? Kill me too? She turned to address the crowd. Our king has grown unstable, violent. He's allowed a human and her strange child to influence his judgment. He's broken our oldest traditions to protect them. And now he murders nobles who question his decisions. They didn't question, Aldrich said flatly. They attempted kidnapping. Because the child is dangerous. Vane gestured broadly. Every vampire in this citadel has felt it. That boy carries power we don't understand. Power that could destroy us all. Power that could free us all. A new voice called from the crowd. Everyone turned. An older vampire stepped forward, the same silver-haired council member from the breakfast. Lord Corvin. I've studied the old texts, Corvin continued. The Nightbound weren't our enemies. They were our salvation. And if that boy carries their blood, then he's an abomination. Vane snarled. The Nightbound were purged for good reason. They made us weak, dependent on human mercy instead of our own strength. They made us civilized, Corvin countered. Without them, we've become exactly what humans fear. Monsters in the dark. The hall erupted in shouts, some supporting Vane, others Corvin. Mira saw the crowd beginning to fracture, nobles choosing sides. Aldrich stood, and the authority in that simple movement silenced everyone. Enough. His gray eyes swept the hall. I am still your king, and I will not. The explosion came from above. The ceiling shattered in a rain of stone and crystal. Vampires scattered as debris crashed down. Through the dust and chaos, figures dropped from the hole. Masked vampires in combat gear, moving with military precision. Assassins, someone screamed. But they weren't targeting Aldrich. They were coming straight for Mira. She saw it in slow motion, 3 of them changing trajectory mid-fall, blades gleaming. Time seemed to freeze. Then Aldrich was there, moving faster than her eyes could track. He intercepted the first attacker, tearing the vampire's arm off with his bare hands. The second attacker's blade scored across Aldrich's chest before he crushed the vampire's skull. The third got through. Mira felt the blade pierce her side, a line of fire that stole her breath. She collapsed, hands pressed to the wound, feeling hot blood seep between her fingers. Mira. Aldrich's roar shook the hall, and for the first time in 300 years, the curse cracked. She saw it happen, saw his gray eyes flood with color, shifting from ash to silver to something almost alive. Saw his face contort with an emotion so raw it looked like pain.
Fear.
Not the muted, distant awareness the curse allowed. Real, visceral, human fear. He was terrified of losing her. The remaining assassin lunged again, but Aldrich caught him mid-strike. And what happened next would haunt Mira's dreams for years. The king unleashed. Power exploded outward, a shockwave of pure force that sent every vampire in the hall to their knees. The assassin in Aldrich's grip disintegrated, turning to ash in seconds. And when Aldrich spoke, his voice carried the weight of 500 years.
Who
Sent them. Silence. Then Lady Seraphine began to laugh. Oh, Aldrich. You finally felt something. She stood despite the crushing pressure of his power. And all it took was nearly losing your forced bride. Her smile was terrible. The council sends its regards. You orchestrated this. Aldrich's voice was barely human. You ordered them to target her. We needed to test a theory. Seraphine gestured to the carnage. The curse allows you to feel protective rage. But real fear? Real grief? That required proper motivation. Her eyes glittered. Now we know. You've formed an attachment despite the forced bond. Which means the curse is weakening. And that terrifies you. It changes everything. Seraphine's mask finally dropped, revealing cold calculation beneath. A king who can love is a king who can rebel. We can't allow that. She raised her hand. Lord Vane.
now?
Vane moved, but not toward Aldrich. Toward the exit. Toward the stairs leading to the royal chambers.
Toward Rowan.
Aldrich's eyes widened with understanding and horror. No. But he was too far away. And Mira was bleeding out on the floor. And Vane was already gone, racing toward a 6-year-old boy who was the key to everything. Aldrich hesitated for only a heartbeat, torn between Mira bleeding on the floor and Rowan in danger. Go! Mira gasped, pressing harder against her wound. Save him. The king vanished, moving at inhuman speed. Around the hall, chaos erupted. Nobles drew weapons. The Shadow Unit guards formed a protective circle around Mira, and Lady Seraphine stood at the center of it all, smiling like she'd won. "Foolish," she said softly. "He's left his queen undefended." "Actually," Lord Corvin said, appearing beside Mira with two other council members, "he's left her with us." Seraphine's smile faltered. "You're choosing the wrong side, Corvin."
No.
"I'm choosing the side that doesn't murder children." He knelt beside Mira, examining her wound. "It's deep, but you'll live. Vampire blades rarely strike vitals. Too much sport in watching humans bleed slowly." Mira gritted her teeth against the pain. "Rowan, the king will reach him. Have faith." Aldrich crashed through the door to his chambers, heart hammering, an unfamiliar sensation after centuries of numbness. The curse was fracturing, emotions flooding back in overwhelming waves.
Terror.
Fury. Desperation. He found Vane in Rowan's room, standing over the bed. The 4 Shadow Unit guards lay unconscious, not dead, thankfully, but incapacitated by some kind of sleeping spell. Rowan was awake, pressed against the headboard, clutching his stuffed rabbit. His gray eyes were wide but oddly calm. "Step away from the boy," Aldrich ordered. Vane turned slowly. "Or what? You'll kill another noble? Start a civil war over a human child?" "Yes." The simple certainty in that word made Vane pause. "You've changed," the noble said quietly. "The curse is breaking, isn't it? You're actually feeling again." He looked at Rowan. "Because of him. Because of all of them." Aldrich moved closer, every muscle coiled to strike. "Now step away." "I can't." Vane's expression was pained. "Don't you see? If the curse breaks, you'll remember what you once were. You'll remember caring about your people. You'll start making decisions based on emotion instead of cold logic. You'll become dangerous to everything we've built." "You mean everything you've corrupted? We kept the kingdom stable. You turned me into a puppet." For the first time in 300 years, Aldrich's voice broke with genuine rage. "You killed the woman I loved. You cursed me into numbness. You've ruled through me like I'm a mask you wear when convenient." He took another step forward. "That ends tonight." Vane moved faster than thought, grabbing Rowan by the throat. Aldrich froze. "Here's what happens now," Vane said calmly, though his hand trembled. "You let me walk out of here with the boy. We'll keep him safe. Train him. Eventually, he might even be useful. But you'll never see him again. And you'll return to being the empty king we need you to be." "Let him go." Aldrich's voice was deadly quiet.
No.
"I'll tear you apart. Then the boy dies with me. My hand will snap his neck before you cross half this room." Vane's black eyes glittered. "Choose, Aldrich. Your freedom or his life." The king stood perfectly still. Every instinct screamed at him to attack. But Vane was right. He was too far away. One wrong move and Rowan would die. Then Rowan did something unexpected. He stopped struggling, looked directly at Vane with those unnaturally perceptive gray eyes. "You're not mean," the boy said softly. "You're scared." Vane's grip loosened slightly. "What?" "You're scared the king will remember how to love people. Because then he won't need you anymore." Rowan's voice was gentle, almost sad. "You're scared of being alone. Stop talking. I can help." Rowan reached up and touched Vane's face. The runes appeared. They blazed across the walls in waves of silver fire, the same symbols from before, but brighter, stronger, spreading like roots through stone. The light was blinding. Vane screamed and jerked back, releasing Rowan. The boy tumbled onto the bed, then scrambled to his feet. But the runes didn't stop. They were spreading from Rowan like a shockwave, pouring down the walls, across the floor, racing through the entire citadel. "Rowan, stop." Aldrich started forward. "You'll hurt yourself." "I have to." Rowan's voice was strained. "I have to make them see." The light intensified. And suddenly Aldrich felt it, the curse shattering like glass inside his chest. Emotions crashed over him in a tsunami, 300 years of suppressed feelings hitting all at once. Love for Alara, grief at her death, rage at his counsel, hope at meeting Mira, terror at almost losing her. And affection. Genuine, overwhelming affection for the strange, brave woman who challenged vampires to protect her son. He fell to his knees, gasping. Throughout the citadel, vampires cried out as the night-bound light touched them. Mira, still in the great hall, saw ancient vampires weeping, clutching their chests, feeling emotions they'd forgotten were possible. The light showed them everything. Showed them what they'd become, without the Nightbound to guide them. Showed them the monster beneath the politics. In Rowan's room, the boy collapsed. Aldrich caught him before he hit the floor, cradling the small body against his chest. Rowan's breathing was shallow, his skin too pale. No, no, no. The king's voice broke. Rowan, stay with me. Stay. The boy's eyes fluttered open, gray and distant. Did it work? He whispered. Yes, Aldrich's throat tightened. But you need to rest. You used too much. Had to. Rowan smiled weakly. You needed to be sad so you could be happy again. Then his eyes closed, and the runes faded. The curse was broken. But Aldrich didn't know if Rowan would wake up. Rowan slept for 3 days. Mira refused to leave his side, despite her own injury. The healers had sealed her wound with vampire medicine, burns that hurt worse than the blade, but worked faster than any human remedy. Aldrich didn't leave either. He sat in a chair across from Mira, watching the boy breathe. His newly awakened emotions were still raw, overwhelming. Every hour brought fresh waves of feeling, grief for lost time, rage at his counsel, and underneath it all, a fierce protectiveness that surprised him with its intensity. Will he wake up? Mira asked for the 100th time. Yes, Aldrich said it like a vow. He has to. On the morning of the 4th day, Rowan's eyes opened.
Nana.
Mira sobbed and pulled him into her arms, holding him like she'd never let go. Aldrich felt his own eyes burning, a sensation he hadn't experienced in 3 centuries. You scared me, Mira whispered into Rowan's hair. Don't ever do that again. I'm sorry. Rowan pulled back and looked at Aldrich. Did it help? Are you not sad anymore? I'm very sad, Aldrich admitted. But I'm also happy, and grateful, and terrified. And he smiled, the expression feeling strange on his face after so long. Human. You made me human again. Good. Rowan yawned. Can I have breakfast? They laughed, actually laughed, and it felt like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. The council convened that afternoon. What remained of it, anyway? Lady Seraphine was gone, fled during the chaos, along with her closest supporters. Lord Vane had been imprisoned, awaiting trial. 12 other nobles had surrendered voluntarily, begging mercy. Lord Corvin stood at the council table, looking older and more tired than ever. The kingdom is in upheaval, he reported. But not rebellion. The Nightbound light showed every vampire in the citadel what we'd become. Most are ashamed,
Confused.
feeling emotions for the first time in decades. He paused. Some are handling it better than others. And the humans? Aldrich asked. Mira sat beside him now, not behind the throne, but next to it.
Equal.
The border villages are cautious but hopeful. Word of what happened has spread. They're calling the boy a miracle. Corvin glanced at Rowan, who was coloring in the corner with guards watching protectively. They're not wrong. He's not a tool, Mira said firmly. Or a symbol. He's a child. I know. Corvin bowed his head. And I apologize for what my people tried to make him. We were so focused on maintaining power that we forgot why we wanted it in the first place. He looked at Aldrich. You have a choice now, Your Majesty. The curse is broken. You could disband the council entirely. Rule alone. No one would blame you. Aldrich was quiet for a long moment, feeling the weight of 300 years pressing on him. No, he finally said. The council exists for a reason. We need different perspectives. Balance. What we don't need is a council that rules through manipulation and fear. He stood. I'm dissolving the old council. We'll create a new one, half vampire, half human. Real representation. Real cooperation. Corvin's eyes widened. That's Unprecedented.
Good.
We've had enough precedent, Aldrich looked at Mira. And I'm dissolving the Nightbound Pact. She blinked. What? The treaty was created to force connection between our people. But forced bonds breed resentment, he turned to address the room. From this day forward, no human will be compelled to marry into vampire nobility. Any unions will be chosen. Willing. Real. Including yours? Corvin asked carefully. Aldrich looked at Mira. Really looked at her. This fierce human woman who'd fought vampires with a candlestick, who'd bled protecting what mattered, who'd raised a son extraordinary enough to break a 300-year curse. Especially mine, he knelt, right there in the council chamber, in front of everyone. Mira Ashwood, I'm asking, not as a king, not as part of a treaty, but as a man who's finally remembered how to feel, will you stay? Not as tribute or prisoner, but as partner, as equal, as queen by choice. Mira stared at him, tears streaming down her face. You're giving me the option to leave? I'm giving you freedom. If you want to go, I'll arrange safe passage. A home in any village you choose. Wealth enough to live comfortably. Protection for you and Rowan forever. His gray eyes, no longer dead, but alive with emotion, held hers. But if you stay, it will be because you want to. Because you believe we can build something better. The silence stretched. Then Rowan's voice piped up from the corner. Stay, Mama. The sad king isn't sad anymore. And he needs us. Mira laughed through her tears. Out of the mouths of babes, she looked at Aldrich. He's right. You do need us. Someone has to make sure you don't forget how to feel again. Is that a yes? It's a yes, she pulled him to his feet. But I have conditions. Name them. Rowan gets a normal childhood. He doesn't train as Nightbound. He doesn't break curses. He doesn't become a weapon or a symbol or anything except a 6-year-old boy who likes coloring and bedtime stories. Agreed. And you stop calling yourself cursed. You're not broken, Aldrich. You survived. Now you get to live. He felt something crack open in his chest, something warm and terrifying and wonderful. I don't know how, he admitted quietly. Then we'll figure it out together. She took his hand, her skin warm against his cold palm. That's what families do. Families. The words settled over him like a benediction. That night, the Citadel held a celebration. Not the cold, formal affairs of the old court, but something genuine. Vampires and humans dancing together, sharing food and stories, learning to trust again. Aldrich stood on a balcony overlooking the courtyard, watching it all. Mira joined him, and they stood in comfortable silence. Thank you, he said finally. For what? For giving me a reason to hope again, he looked at her. For 300 years, I existed. Now, because of you and your impossible son, I get to live. Mira leaned against him. We both do. Below, Rowan ran through the crowd, chasing a vampire child in a game of tag. His laughter rang clear as bells. The kingdom had a new beginning. Not perfect, not without challenges, but real. And in a castle built on shadows, a family formed by impossible circumstance finally found light.